You guys, welcome to the Mite Bomb Beekeeping Podcast. I'm back finally. Swarm season has just had me running around like crazy since April. I had no time for anything. I had a beard. It was terrible, but it's finally pretty much over. Now it's cutout season, which I don't do a lot of those, so I finally had time to sit down and do a recording with a guest, and it turned out to be a really good guest. And I think you're gonna enjoy it. If you do, send me a comment. If you hate it, please send me a comment. Even come on and tell me how much you hate it. That would be great. I hope you like this. I plan to try to keep keep some good episodes coming a little more frequently. Also, just for giggles, I had my Mite Bomb Beekeeping T-shirt made up, the one that I wear in my couple of my YouTube videos. I have it on, and people were like, "Oh man, I like that shirt." So I made it up. You can find it in the link that I will put in the description here. And I mentioned my YouTube channel, I think, once or twice. I changed the name from PA Honeybee Rescue and Removal, which is a giant mouthful to tell people, and they'll never remember it or find it. I changed it to PA Swarm King as kind of a joke, but I kind of like it. It's easier to remember. It's kind of goofy like me, so you can go to YouTube and look up PA Swarm King if you want to and see all my shenanigans that were going on for all the time that I wasn't uploading podcasts. So I think that's pretty much it. I hope you guys like it, and I'll see you on the next one. Hello, Matt.
Hello.
Welcome to my podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. Today, everybody, I have Matt Feldhues on the. Is that how you say your last name?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Our friendship goes way back, all the way to Thursday, when Matt sent me an email asking a couple questions about getting started in beekeeping, and had a bunch of questions. And I thought, rather than go back and forth, with a whole bunch of questions, maybe it would make a good podcast. I don't know. So tonight we're just going to have a conversation with somebody who does not have any bees, hasn't started yet. And I'm not sure if Solomon did that over on the Treatment Free Beekeeping Podcast. I know he's had some new people, but I don't know if he's ever had anyone who doesn't have bees yet. Maybe he did. But if not, this is the first. So Matt, what were some of the things you were wondering about? And actually, first of all, why do you want to mess with bees?
So, just kind of a little introduction. My wife and I looked for a long time, and we found a little place. Well, it's little to some people, it's big to other people, I guess. We got 10 acres in the country, kind of northeast of Cincinnati, a little bit, and we moved from the city. So we had the little quarter-acre house, and we have 6 kids. And we moved out here, and last year we bought this house. It's like an 1870 house or something, and we didn't do anything outside. We just remodeled a bunch of the inside of the house. I've been working on that, and finally got most of the first floor done, and the upstairs kind of fixed up enough that it's livable, and we still have things on the list. But this year is going to be outside year, so I've been cutting down dead ash trees, and we planted I think it's a big garden. Maybe some people don't, but it's like 6,000 square feet and got a bunch of vegetables going and all that, and got the pool straightened out and started thinking about different things that we can do. My wife has started a company in November. Great time in our lifetime to try to start a company, but she started a company called Weiss Baking Company, and she's doing baked goods and trying to figure out that different market. And so kind of going to farmers markets and stuff, seeing people with honey and wax and candles and different things. So she asked if that would be a good idea for us to try to keep bees, and I thought that'd be a great idea. I kind of nerd out on this stuff, so I thought that would be fun. So that's kind of how we got to wanting to do this, and then I started doing some research because I'm an engineer, and so I like to know how things work. And I didn't realize, the reason I reached out to you is I didn't realize kind of initially there's this kind of, I'll call it bifurcation between beekeepers, where
Oh
some
yeah.
people are all in, like, you got to treat your bees. And I reached out to some of the local guys here, and they're like, well, you don't have to treat your bees, but 99.98% of them will die. And then so I've been listening to podcasts. I drive around a little bit to different client sites for work and stuff, and found Michael Bush, and found, I think, Lee Knott with Five Apple Farms, and Solomon Parker, and I found your podcast and listened to some of that. And I just started asking people questions to see if people would respond or help me out, to try to learn. That's what I want to do, is learn, so that I don't, totally botch it up, which I'm sure I will anyway. But so that's how I ended up to you. Hopefully that's a decent introduction for how I got here anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you want to keep bees because it's fun. I mean, I have fun messing with bees. To me, that's what it's about. I was afraid you were gonna say you want to get bees so you can help save the bees, because that always makes my eyes roll back to the back of my head. But
Yeah, I can't. Maybe I can save the bees, but I don't know that I can do it with makers in Ohio. So we'll see about all that. I think it would be cool. I think they're cool anyway. But I don't know that I'm gonna save them. I'm pretty sure I'm not.
yeah, well, you're not gonna save them, but that's because they really don't need saving. I was thinking about this while I was out in the yard today catching a swarm hanging in my tree. As soon as I got home from work, I thought, man, what are we going to talk about tonight? Is he going to say he wants to save the bees? And I was going to explain how the last time, at last count, there was something like 3 million registered colonies just in the United States. Those are only the registered ones. It doesn't give you any idea how many are unregistered, and it doesn't take into account any feral colonies at all. And worldwide, it's almost right at 100 million colonies worldwide, only registered colonies. So I can't think of any other animal that exists, a population of 100 million that needs saving. And as far as those people telling you that 99 point whatever of your bees are going to die, I mean, if you only have one colony and it dies, that's 100%. So
That's
they
a
can
percent.
they can be happy about that. Big deal. I mean, but the thing is, what I try to when I take people under my wing a little bit, I first tell them, don't buy bees. Number one, don't buy bees. I'm gonna tell you all about catching your own bees, collecting swarms, swarm trapping, just making connections, getting a bunch of freebies, so you don't have to worry about if you. I don't know. I'm not sure how many colonies you want to keep, one or two or three, but I caught almost 100 swarms this season. Um, they're killing me right now. I have so many bees, I'm like tripping over them. But what I try to tell people is if I can catch almost 100 and turn down probably 40 or 50, anybody can catch two or three. I mean, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah. So catch the bees, enjoy the beekeeping, and if they happen to die, there's still 99 million left.
Right.
You're not going to make a dent in them. And the biggest thing for me is not contributing to the problem, which is propping up bad genetics over and over and over again.
Yeah.
The people who you talk to, yeah, they may have a higher. See, you can't even really call it survival rate, because treating beekeepers never have survivors. They have just bees that are alive. The bees did not survive. That's why they romanticize about bees and trees and feral colonies. They call those the survivor bees that they want on their yard. They never call their own bees survivor bees, because that's not what they have. I'm probably getting a little ahead of you, since you don't have bees yet, but I'm sure you understand that part.
I
There's survival, and then there's you had something on life support and it's still alive. It's two
right,
totally separate things.
right.
So treating beekeepers have never had survivors, never had one out of all of them. And people who don't treat their bees and don't buy bees have actually, in my mind, never really taken a loss, because it's almost impossible to get a free colony of bees and end up with nothing to where it's a loss. You're at least going to have wax, some honey, you're going to have some enjoyment, and you're also not going to contribute to bad genetics. You're just going to let them ride, which is what I do. And there's no way, nothing near 90% of my colonies die. And yeah, that's just a fairy tale. And they wouldn't know. They've never done it. Yeah, you got to take everything they say with a grain of salt, really.
Yeah. I so this was one of the motivating factors. I think when I reached out to you, I said you might be the only one that thinks this is a good idea. So everybody, when I say everybody, I talked to like 3 guys that have decent sized operations around here. One of the guys has he's in all the local stores selling honey or whatever, and I don't know how many colonies he has, his bunch. He's not far from me, maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 miles the way the crow flies. And then there's another guy in my county that he sells most of queens around here, I guess, and maybe a lot of the nukes too. And then another guy, he's probably kind of new at this. He's maybe been doing it 4 or 5 years, but when I moved into my house, in my house I need everything. There was a colony of bees living in one of the columns. I have those big like colonial columns in the front of my house, like 20-foot, 12 by 12 hollow columns. And there were bees in there and living in the corner of the column. And I found somebody in my family knew him, gave me his contact information. He came and got him. Which at the time I knew I thought I would want bees actually, but I just didn't have time to deal with it. So he got them. Anyway, I reached out to you because I thought everybody's saying get these nukes, just get a nuke. Don't get a package because it'll be harder for you. Get a nuke, and that sounded really attractive to me. I was like, oh, that's more successful, whatever. And they're not very expensive. Well, to me, they're not very expensive. You get a couple of them for $300 or something like that, and you're going. But then, listening to some of these podcasts and listening to people talk about how you just catch these swarms, it's not a money thing for me. I can afford to buy $300 in bees or something, but then why don't I just trap them? And then they talk about the mites or whatever kills all the colonies. I don't know why they die. I was looking at some,
Mostly beekeepers do that.
it may be, but there's like 40% death or something in colonies or something. I'm like, well, my dad's house is kind of closer to the city than mine, and he's had bees living in a tree there since I was a kid. I don't know if it's, now I know maybe that's a colony that died and another colony took up there. Maybe, who knows? But there's bees there every spring. Every spring there's bees there. I'm like, well, they ain't, so nobody's treating them. I'm damn sure my dad's not going out there with a sprayer and doing anything, and they're just in there. Why don't I get those? So, the treatment thing for me, I don't know if I have strong feelings on this yet. I don't think that back to your point, save the bees. I don't know that I'm like, well, if I do this treatment free thing and I have these strong genetics, or I cultivate strong genetics that can resist mites or whatever else it is that kills the bees, they don't plan right, or they don't keep enough. I don't know what kills them. I'm new at this, but if I catch swarms that are wild, have been living in the wild, and I cultivate this genetic line, well, that's not going to change the genetics of my entire area and the nation or the state or the county even, or whatever. Who cares? That's not really what it's about for me right now, at least. I think it's more about, well, that treatment stuff sounds like a bunch of work, and you got to do something all the time. And then I watch these videos of these guys, and they like scoop up a bunch of bees that they're saving, and they like drown them in alcohol and wash the mites off of them. And I'm like, okay, well, and then I found out this is, and maybe this is kind of weird. how long does a worker bee live? I mean, they got like the life cycle, right? They go through like the nurse thing, and then I don't know what they do, and then eventually they become a forager, I guess. How long
Right.
does all that take before like the one bee dies?
Well, I've never really, well, actually, I do have one way of knowing, but if you read all the books and listen to the general regurgitation from everyone in forums, they'll just tell you it's just a automatic answer, 6 weeks in the summertime, and then in the wintertime they live longer. But I've actually marked bees from a tree that I was waiting for them to swarm. I stood in front of the tree as they were flying in and out, and I caught maybe 100 bees, and I put a pink dot on about 100 bees, and then I released them back into the tree. And when they swarmed a few weeks later, I caught that swarm, and I still saw pink bees going in and out of the hive probably 4 months later. I mean, there was very few, but maybe there's an average of how long they live, but
So a
it's
few months.
yeah, a
That
few
yeah, a
months.
few months. So when we talk about, or I guess when people, I hear people talk about survivor colonies, to use your word, or bees that overwinter or whatever it is, we're really only talking about the queen, because all the rest of them are going to be dead in a few weeks anyway.
Right.
Maybe it's 8 weeks, maybe it's 6 weeks. I don't know how many weeks it is. But when you talk about long-term survival of the colony kind of as an animal, it's not the individual bees. So like bees, they're going to die. They're going to die. They're all going to die. It's just,
Yeah, the
maybe
the
that's
queen.
really jealous, but I don't feel like they're insects. Like, okay,
Yeah, the queen is the one that you're trying to carry through your seasons, and she's producing the bees that are good enough to get her through those seasons. So yeah, essentially that is the most important thing to me. Also, that's to me. I know which queens are my favorite. They produce the best bees that that live the best, and those are the ones that overwinter. So I want daughters from that queen, and then the cycle just keeps going.
yeah.
But you
So,
you did say a lot of things there. You talked about mite washing, which is another thing that I was thinking of. Um, a lot of people this time of year on all the forums, that's all everybody's talking about. Number one is bearding. Everybody's afraid of bearding. They don't know what's going on.
I don't know
But
what that is.
that's just when there's a whole bunch of bees on the front of the hive because it's hot.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then the number two is all about treatments and mite washing. And I've never done a mite wash on my bees. I don't have any reason to because it's not going to inform anything that I do about my bees. I actually would prefer them to have a ton of mites and still survive than for some reason have fewer mites and survive or die. Um, but the funny thing to me is how quickly, if someone comes in and says, I feel kind of bad about killing a scoop of bees, right away that's pretty much put down really fast for just being some kind of weakling. It's no big deal. It's just a scoop of bees. Um, but something, when I think of it, it kind of bothers me a little bit, even though I'm not a softie about bugs or animals or anything. When I do an inspection, I try not to crush bees. I just don't want to. And that's only a couple bees. It bothers me if I crush a couple, but I do. But I can't see taking a scoop of bees and doing this every month throughout the season to every single colony.
Right. Yeah.
If I had, with 100 colonies, if I took a scoop of bees over a 6 or 7 month period from every single colony, that would be a massive amount of bees that
Yeah, it'd be like a million bees.
I could make like a couple more nukes out of that. But
Yeah.
and only and the thing that's even more ironic is what they're doing is they're trying to find out if their bees are worthless enough to be dragged through with treatments. It's like, okay, this colony has a really high mite count, so basically it sucks. Now let's save it so we can have it next year and make a bunch of nukes off of it.
Right.
It's
I,
totally ridiculous to me.
I do think, and maybe I'm naive when I think this, it's hard to walk the line in the middle, because I thought for a little bit I had this idea that, well, maybe you just treat some of them. Maybe you have some. Maybe I have some bees that I get. One of these local guys wants to help me out, and they give me some nukes or whatever, and they're treated bees, and so they're not selected, I guess is the word you would use, for mite survival or whatever survival. I think this is something you talk about a lot, and maybe this is a sidetrack, but when you say you're selecting for mite survival, you're really selecting for all the different things.
Right.
It doesn't.
Yeah, I'm talking pure survival,
And
pure unassisted survival.
yeah, and maybe the thing that stands out to me, and I just might not know what I'm talking about, but the bees, the mites are not what kills the bees. It's the stuff, you get this wing thing. I forget what that's called. Like tiny wings or whatever. Or there's these viruses that the parasites bring to the bees, but it's not actually the parasite. The bees don't die because they get a mite on them. They die because the mite gives them some other thing that causes a problem. I don't know. But you're selecting away from all of that, and to the point where I'm like, well, maybe I do half and half or something like that. Well, then I really have this kind of, if I treated half of them and I didn't treat half of them, if I caught swarms or whatever, which I do want to talk about that. I'm going to have this bee yard that's all this mixed genetics, and I'm not really selecting anything, because the not treated bees are going to mate or mix with these treated bees, and then I'm in this spot where I'm not really selecting the best I could. I don't know. There's probably enough other people around me. I don't know anybody, but there's probably enough other people locally keeping bees that I'm not really achieving anything by doing that. But maybe I would be. I don't know.
Well, just buying bees at all is just such a terrible idea unless you're unless you're in it for the money. If you're planning to be in the honey business or something, or the nuke selling business, then it comes down to just money, and that's basically kind of where I part ways with anybody really. If they're treating because of that, I just think what they're doing is kind of, I'm just I'm just not interested in. I mean, I have chickens, and I could give a shit what Purdue does. I don't want to talk to a Purdue chicken raiser. I have my own chickens, and I'm a just small chicken keeper. So kind of when it gets into the bee business, then maybe, I guess all bets are off. You're just saving everything because you have to make money. It just comes down to greed and money. That's all there is.
Yeah.
So just to buy a couple nukes and then catch swarms, it's just a bad idea, because if you do it right, if you put effort into it, you're gonna have so many swarms and calls for free bees, you're just gonna kick yourself. Even if bees were only pennies, it's
Yeah.
still, I don't like to mince words. I think it's just dumb to buy bees.
Yeah.
It's like they're free. It's like buying dandelions. It would be silly. So, and
So
then the idea of treating some and not others, to me, I couldn't do the mental gymnastics involved with doing something like that, where I have these bees over here that I'm treating. Like, I'm going through all the motions that a commercial beekeeper does, and then on the other side, I'm trying to like split my brain in half to where I'm selecting for survival on the other side.
yeah.
When all you'd have to do is, if you have good survival from your freebies, you just expand from them, and then you add more freebies the next year, and
Yeah.
and let the weak die off and just keep expanding. You're just basically harvesting from the atmosphere, from nature. You're not you're not depleting anything. You're not affecting anything. You're not a loser if your bees die. It says when the bees die, that says something about the bees, not the person. The person just has the bees. Um,
Yeah. I think that's so. I right now, and it's early, right? I'm leaning towards this whole, don't treat the bees, just see what happens. And I agree with you. I think there's probably freebies out there. Now, I say that never having trapped a swarm. Um, and, again, maybe they're financially incentivized to tell me this somehow, but the rest of the bee community that I've talked to locally is like, oh, just get some nukes or whatever. And I tell them, well, what if I just build, this winter I just put together, I'm pretty handy. what if I put together some traps, and I just put them out, at my, family or whatever, spread out across the city, or maybe a handful of places. I put 10 or 12 of them out. Maybe I can think of 10 or 12 places, and I catch swarms. Well, then I like watch these videos and I'm all panicked because I'm not going to know what to do to get them out of the trap, or they're going to build this weird comb in there because I'm not starting with any frames that have any. I'm like, it's going to be an empty box, right?
Oh no,
So
you're scaring me. You make make it sound scary to me.
yeah, so it's going
It's
to be this,
really easy.
empty box, and they're gonna cross comb it all up, and I'm going to have this blob that I have to pull out of this thing and try to get it into a hive somehow and make it all stung up because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And it is kind of daunting. I mean, at least, you keep bees, so maybe it's not, maybe you can't relate. But from my perspective, I'm like, maybe it is kind of daunting. I don't know.
It can be. I mean, I was thinking about this before we, decided to do this. I was thinking, it's hard enough for me to get someone to relax about bees that's actually had bees for a year or two. It's going to be 10 times harder for someone who's never had bees because you haven't even been inside of a hive of bees yet. But I can tell you that opening up a new, I mean, if you get a quote unquote good nuke that's busting at the seams, like a lot of these nuke sellers tell you, that's pretty daunting to me. I mean, and I've had bees for a while. So a swarm that moves into your box on its own, or to shake a swarm off of a little bush into a box, there's a million videos. I mean, I have a million videos on my channel. It's just really not that daunting. And even if you do open up a box that has some cross comb in it, that's part of learning, like cutting combs and putting them in frames. There's plenty of sources to show you how that's done. Um, if if the goal is to have everything go completely smoothly and absolutely no veering from perfection, it just becomes so boring. For me, it's so boring to watch people drop a swarm into a box of plastic foundation and put a feeder on top with a pollen patty in a box, and it's so mechanical and boring. That's just not, there's nothing fun there unless that's just how you do stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe they're
would
in the
be
honey
fun for
business
me
or something.
because it would for sure be fun for me because I don't know nothing about it. I'll be like, look at him in there. It's amazing.
It is.
But
And
so I get nervous. Like I can build the thing that they say to build, right? Like I can build them. I'm probably just going to build all my own hive bodies because I think I can build them at least cheaper, maybe not better. Maybe better. I don't know, than the ones that I can buy on the internet or whatever. They are so expensive. If you buy them, it's like one, it's like 1 by 8 that's 6 foot long will make a hive body, and you can't. And they're charging like they charge like $15 for that or something. It's crazy.
yeah, I don't know if you can find someone, like I have a guy that's not far from me that builds hive equipment that's pretty cheap. It would be almost impossible to find the wood and to put the time in to work to make them cheaper than he makes them. So
Maybe
that's one thing.
that's
And
an
the other thing is a lot of the catalogs try to sell you a lot of stuff that you don't even need. Like they they make you spend so much on stuff you don't need. All you really need is a box, a solid bottom, and a solid top. You don't need, all kinds of slatted racks and screen bottoms, inner covers, feeders, queen excluders, all this stuff. You don't need all that stuff. You just
Do you
need a
use queen
box.
excluders?
I did use one about 10 years ago. Uh, I probably used it incorrectly. The bees didn't go through it. I got mad and I chucked it, and I've never used one since then. Not for any reason. I've never used one. Um, they're just not necessary, really.
Yeah, that's going to be a mess for me because I'll be trying to figure out. Oh God, I'll be trying to figure out why they're doing what, where they're doing in the hive, and all that stuff. And I guess part of me is a big part of me is like, well, they do what they do, and I'll figure it out. I'm reasonably intelligent. I can watch YouTube videos, and I can ask for help when I need help, and it goes how it goes, man. Especially like that's part of the other reason I'm like, well, just trap them in the wild because they already know what to do. Like they're bees, man. They know what to do. They're going to do the right thing and it's going to be fine. So,
Well, if you trap bees, or like me when I go on swarm calls, you're not always going to get, feral bees that have been on their own for a long time.
yeah, that's true.
Often you will catch bees from other people. And that's the thing you got to remember is they're still free. They're still going to draw combs. They're going to make honey. They're still a ball to have fun, to keep them and get in there and manage them. It's just that they might die in the wintertime. It sounds silly, but that's it. That's the only difference. And if they do, good riddance to them. There's
Yeah. And then
plenty more.
I don't have to start with empty boxes next year for my traps. I can put actual honeycomb in there, which is supposedly helpful.
Well, yeah, some drawn comb definitely helps with traps. But what I try to tell people is don't depend on traps because I, I didn't even put traps. I put like 3 traps out this year. I caught 2 swarms in traps. The other 90 something I got from calls, from just giving out my card, making connections with people, going around talking about bees to everybody, to where they just know who to call all the time. It's it's much easier, and you have a higher percentage of getting swarms from swarm calls than from traps. And yeah, back to what I was saying about you might catch other people's bees. I caught 2 swarms this year that had marked queens. They had a blue dot on them, and I knew right away those are probably packaged bees. So all I did was sold those queens to somebody who really didn't care. They just needed a queen. I said, "Hey, I got a queen over here. You can have it. She's already marked." And I just used my own genetics to let them raise one of my own queens. So now that whole colony is now my bees, instead of some Joe Schmo who paid $150 for a package that just took off because he had a feeder in, and they swarmed in the same year that he got them. So it doesn't really. When you do catch really good feral bees, you'll kind of know it. And a lot of times, if you go on a call and you see a swarm hanging, if you just look around, you'll find where they're coming from a lot of times, out of a tree or out of the corner of a building. And if this is in the springtime, you know they overwintered on their own. So in my mind, they're survivor bees. They had no one fussing with them. Um, and I have a lot of them like that. Even that still doesn't mean that they're absolutely going to survive. They're still selection never stops. They're going to still be subjected to everything, and it just they'll just get whittled down to the best every year, and it just gets better for me and a lot of people. Maybe if you have a lot of treating beekeepers in your area, you may never get a a bulletproof line of bees. I can't guarantee that you or anybody is going to develop a perfect line of bees just by not treating. You may just be catching people's bees every year, keeping them, harvesting honey, having fun, and they die. The good thing is you're not contributing to keeping them weak. You're still a beekeeper. You're still keeping bees. It just says that the bees in your area are low quality. They're not. They have no survival skills. But
Yeah,
that's the worst case scenario.
I live in the country, so I actually I have my place is I have a couple neighbors, and most of it is owned by the Cincinnati Nature Center, like 800 acres around me.
Okay.
And they don't have any bees there, so it's pretty far before you get to anywhere that even might have bees. I don't know how far they fly. I guess somebody said they fly like 4 or 5 miles or something like that, but it seems really far. So who knows? Yeah, that's a gamble. I guess we'll see what happens with that. What do however I get hive equipment, I think I'm going to go. There's all these different things, and I guess I'm going to go with the Langstroth thing. Am I even saying that correctly?
Langstroth, yeah, I hear people butcher that all the time. They say Longstrom, Longstrath.
Yeah.
I think it's just Langstroth. That's how I say it.
Okay.
That's how it's spelled.
Well, I think that's what I'm going to go with. And then I think Michael Bush was talking about this, the small cell comb. Do you use foundation? That's another one.
I I do sometimes. Like in the beginning, I had some small cell foundation that the bees drew out. I use that. Some what I really try to do is in the spring, all the way from April all the way up till about now in July. I'm always dropping foundationless frames in there because I want them to build their own combs, their own cells, especially my feral bees, my small bees, because they automatically draw small cells. They don't need foundation to do that. Some of the bees I caught are pretty big. They're probably going to draw large. So I don't really focus on that too much. The main thing I don't like to do is take bees that are already small and give them large cell because it's just like you're just undoing the several generations it took for them to revert
Yep.
or to regress back to a small size. To me, that's just silly to take. I've seen some videos of people so ecstatic they're catching feral bees. They see them coming out of the tree. There's a swarm right in front of the tree, and they're like, "Yeah, I got these great bees." And then they're dropping them on right cell foundation, which is the biggest that exists. So it's like they're just undoing everything that those bees may have done. They might still be big bees. Who knows? I just don't like to undo it. So I'll give my bees either whatever comb I have that's drawn or foundationless. And now I will use foundation in the upper boxes where they store the honey and also on the edges of the boxes where they store honey. So, because I don't really care, it's just honey frames. And if they put a little brood in there, it's not a heart attack situation as long as the brood nest, the center area is their own cells, their own combs, or sometimes I'll have small cell foundation in there, but it's what they're already making. So it's not like I'm really focused on it. I hope that answers that. I don't claim that it does anything great. It saves anything. I don't claim that it makes mites go away or helps them survive. It's just that's what they already have. So I want them to keep that.
Sure. The other thing, and so I told you I've been listening to some of these different podcasts and all this, and I feel like all the questions that I have are like really remedial for a lot of people. And so if you listen to the podcast, actually, maybe you'll be surprised by this. I haven't heard, at least in the podcast that I've been listening to, a whole lot about treatment. What I have heard a whole lot about is grafting and when to split and how to queen castles or whatever they're called and all this stuff. I'm like, man, do I need to learn all that right now?
No, no,
Just
you don't need.
a year?
I've never grafted. I've never grafted. I tried once or twice, but I have the worst vision, and I just kept poking right through the cells. I couldn't do it. I gave up. I don't really need to. I, splitting is something that you can do. It's not a big deal. You just in the spring, when your colony's ready, it's kind of boiling over. You just want to split them a little bit so maybe they won't swarm or they'll swarm. It's like just you can do that. What was the other one? You're talking about queen castles. I don't have any of those. You don't have to do that unless you're trying to raise queens on a larger scale, which I really am not. So no, you don't really need any of that. A bunch of my colonies, I didn't even split. They just swarmed and I caught them. They just hang on the trees right here. And out here in the country, it doesn't really matter. They're not. I've never had a neighbor call me about bees going into their roof or their wall. They're
Yeah,
mostly they're mostly just hitting the woods, and I'll catch them again. You know, they'll
yeah.
they'll it's
I'm
just
not
fewer bees I have to
worried
take care of.
about. I'm not super worried about the neighbors. It's further than I can hit a golf ball to the neighbor's house. So maybe that's not far for bees. I don't know. It seems like they're far away. I can't see them. So that's good that you say that. At least it's reassuring for me because I just skip those episodes because I'm like, that seems really complicated. I don't know what I'm doing. Um, I guess I think I am maybe naively growing in confidence that I'm going to be able to get some bees. Somehow I'll get some bees. I'm not going to have to buy them. And hopefully they're wild bees and they're going to be okay. And then I'm going to have bees in boxes and I have no idea what to do. I watch I watch some of these YouTube videos or whatever, people doing hive inspections and this and that, and they got I think they're called supercells. They like put like a queen cell in the middle of the comb. Is that what that's called?
Well, it's called a supersedure cell. It's
Yeah,
usually made when the queen that's currently in the colony has some type of defect, or she's not performing for some reason. Her pheromones are becoming weaker, and they start to produce a new queen. And then often they'll let her live until the other one hatches, and then they'll either boot her out or she'll take off, and or they'll kill her. Yeah, it's a supersedure cell. They usually only make a few of those, and if you see those, it's really not a big deal. You let them go. You let them do what they're doing.
yeah.
As opposed to the swarm cells, you'll know because your colony's jam packed, and they have cells near the bottom of the frames. And usually by the time you see them, it might be too late. They might already be hanging in a tree somewhere. But again, if it's freebies and you don't have to worry about your neighbors, a lot of times I'll just let them swarm and grab them out of the tree. You really can't do a better split than that.
Yeah, the I guess I watch these people are looking at stuff, and I heard somebody say, when you get into your hives, have a purpose. Like, my purpose is going to be to take this apart and put it back together and walk away. I think I just like I don't know what my purpose is
Yeah.
supposed to be.
Okay. Well,
I don't know what the hell
I,
I'm doing.
well, your purpose, like I said, I still don't know how many colonies you want to have. Maybe you might want to just start with 2 or 3 next year. But generally, your purpose, let's say you went and caught a swarm. You got your first swarm call. You've seen me do it on YouTube 80 times, so you know what to do. So you get there, you shake them into your box, you take them home. Usually, you let them sit there for a week to 10 days, and then you'll want to go in for an inspection. And the main thing you want to check is is your queen laying? Are they building comb? And you're kind of going in there to be curious, really. But yeah, you want to see if your queen's laying. And once you know that, you just close them back up. And then after you have a few colonies, that's the main thing I go in for. If I'm going into a colony, it's number one, just to see if I have a queen in there and do they have enough room. Because if they build out the whole box, you can add another box so they can build up into it. Or you can take honey out and give them a new frame, or you can split them. You just want to make sure they have room and that they have a queen. And a lot of mine, not a lot, but a few of them, I go in and there is no queen, and there's no eggs, and there's no brood. So I go, all right, they need a queen. So I'll go through some other hives, and anybody have a cell hanging around somewhere, I'll take out and put in this other one, or I'll just give them a frame it with some eggs and larvae in there. They'll make a new queen. You know, there are a lot of options you have when you have a few colonies.
Sure. I think you've asked probably 2 or 3 times now how many I want. That's one of the things I'm a little nervous about because I don't understand the time commitment, I guess. And so I think I'll let it go. Maybe I have 10, maybe I have 20, maybe I have 50. But when I'm spending more than a few hours a week working on this, it's going to start impacting other things that I have to take care of. And so that's probably the limit. I don't know what that number is.
Well, for me, that's a great thing about not being a treating beekeeper, because I see the stress they go through and just the heartache and the labor intensive way of keeping bees and just worrying about everything. And I have none of that. And you can either have it if you want it, or not have it also. So I don't I have 100 or so colonies right now. I don't I didn't really want that many. My goal was to have 40 this year going into winter. Um, but I have all these bees, and that's what's selling bees. Like I'm delivering 2 nukes tomorrow. I've given a ton away, um, and I work a full-time job, but the treating and the counting and the just constant worrying takes up most of a conventional beekeeper's time. I don't know where the enjoyment comes from, but for me, even with that many, I still know just walking around my yard, I can point to one. Oh, I know this one might be missing a queen. This one has one. This one swarmed last week. You, you'll get to know your colonies if you keep it manageable. But as I was saying, the great part is you really don't have to do anything if you don't want to. Once you put them in a box, they know what to do. They're either going to live or they're going to die. You don't absolutely, they don't need you. You're really not improving anything that they do. Unless they go queenless, they'll eventually peter out. But yeah, the amount of time you want to put into them is really up to you. Don't let anyone tell you you have to devote so much time to so many bees all the time. It's just not true. I don't.
Well, so I guess we'll see how it goes in the spring. I guess around here it looks like I found like a Reddit thread or something. Somebody was saying get your swarm traps up or whatever by maybe the end of March or something because they're going to start swarming in April. I don't know if that's true or not, but maybe that's what I'm going to try sometime in March and then see what happens and see how many I get and go from there. And I think whatever happens next year is kind of okay because at least then the following year I'm starting with some drawn comb and things like that if I catch any, which I guess sounds like it's not that hard to catch them. We'll see. The swarm thing, I'd kind of be nervous about putting it out there that I'm into catching swarms. Like you have your website or you put your card up all over the place or whatever. I personally would probably be nervous about doing that because somebody's going to call me and they'll be like, I got a swarm. And they're like, do you know what to do? And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. I watch lots of videos, man. It's going to be awesome. I'll be there in a little bit and just show up in my truck and like get out and make a fool of myself in front of all the neighborhood kids looking around like, oh, he's going to get him. Yeah, he's going to make an ass out of himself.
Yeah, I remember my first one. My first bee removal was actually a cutout, and it was a swarm, but then before I got there, they moved into somebody's, I don't know what you call it, the thing that goes over their porch. So I had to bust that open to get the bees out. And I didn't tell anybody I didn't really know what I was doing. And I really didn't know what I was doing, but I somehow got them in the box and I ended up having those bees for like 3 years before I just lost track of which ones they were anymore. But even though, sometimes swarms, if you get a call and they're just up really high or they're in a really weird spot, you should just have another beekeeper come show you how to do it in person. It's not, the calls are going to just still keep coming in.
Yeah.
You may not get them all. If they're on a low little bush, a little privet or something, that's just put the box on the ground and just give the branch a little shake or just lean the branch against the box. It's really that easy. Come back and close it up at night.
And then do they swarm again the next day? They're like, oh, this is junk. I'm out of here.
Sometimes they do. I mean, they will sometimes. You'll have people tell you, oh, you got to put a queen excluder over the entrance and put a feeder on so they stay. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Sometimes they will take off. I've had them take off, but it's such a small percentage of the time. And then I just have that box for the next one. Just make sure you always have enough boxes, lids, bottoms, and frames.
Yeah.
So as long as you always have enough. I was scrambling for a while because I used up every piece of equipment I had. And then a buddy of mine gave me like 10 more boxes, and now I filled all those up. So I had one today in the yard. I was hurting trying to find stuff to put them in. And it's getting a little late for swarms, but yeah, just always have plenty of boxes, and it's not hard.
No, I'm gonna order like this is my future. I'm gonna order like 500 frames, and a bunch of foundation, and I'm gonna build all these boxes or find somebody to make them for me, and I'm gonna have all this stuff, and nobody's gonna call me. I'm not gonna catch any swarms.
Well, if you, that'll give me a good chance to mention an episode that I did a while back when I first started this podcast. I think it's called Acquiring Swarms and Other Topics, where I go through, I sound like one of those infomercials now, but there's no money involved. I tell everything that I do. I think I explain exactly how to make a swarm trap. The thing about swarm traps is there's very few rules, but they're very strict. Like, you can do everything right, but if you do one thing wrong, just because people just like to fart around and try to think of some better way to do stuff, you won't catch anything. Like if you might have the perfect box, put the lure in, and then you put a frame in that has honey, and you won't catch any bees because you're almost never going to catch bees in a swarm trap that has honey in it. You're just going to catch ants, and the bees won't move in, or or they won't listen to me when I say you have to make sure you have the right lemongrass oil. If you just get some cheap stuff from Walmart and you stick it in there, it's not the same. It's not even real, and it will not attract bees. Or if you put a screen bottom board on a swarm trap, you're not going to catch bees in them. That you just have to follow the few very strict rules. You also don't have to put them 25 feet up in a tree. You can put them 5 feet on a wall or something. They're very simple to make, but yeah, you just got to follow the rules, and you'll get bees. And then the other things that I talk about is just how to get your name out there. And if you want to make a simple Facebook page, I'll drop my buddy's name, Craig McCorkle. That's one of my buddies. He contacted me a couple years ago, and I gave him this whole talk. I didn't have a podcast or anything, and he took it and ran with it so hard that his first season he went from 0 to like 32 colonies.
Wow.
By catching bees. And he bought one package. There's one thing, I think he already ordered it before I talked to him. He had that package, and he caught so many bees, and now it's the next year, which is this year. He's up to like 75, and that's with selling bees. He's never bought bees since then, and he's in the middle of a city, Philly, and yeah, they're out there. They're easy to get, and yeah, I'm just proud of that dude. He just I just see him all the time on Facebook and YouTube, just catching all these bees and just killing it, and he's having a ball doing it. So
Well,
that's what I want you to do.
I'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna try, and I'm not from agrarian family lineage, I guess. So it's not exactly true. My mom's side of the family has been farming forever, and they know how to do everything. They know how to keep all different types of livestock and grow all different types of things in fields, and they got all the equipment. And I think my cousin plants 1,200 acres or something. I don't know. They know how to do all this stuff, and I ask them all these dumb questions all the time, and they laugh at me, which is fine. But I'm gonna make mistakes, and I can live with that, and I'll learn how to do it. You said you got chickens. I got chickens this year myself, and I got maybe another month, and hopefully they'll start laying eggs. We'll see what happens. But we'll figure it out. I guess that's the plan.
Yeah, you'll make a ton of mistakes, but the great thing is making mistakes with free stuff, that's easily replaceable. You don't want to be making mistakes with a couple of $200 nukes,
right,
and being all upset about it and then giving up. I mean, have make mistakes with free stuff.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah. That's not a bad way to look.
Until you figure it out and you get it, and then you're helping other people out, because it'll happen. That's just a cycle. After you have bees a couple of years, you run into people who want to learn about bees, and now you're telling them the same thing. So
Yeah. Well, I think at a minimum, it's a very reassuring conversation for me. I think I'm gonna try, and we'll see what happens. And if I am successful, I will at least in part give you some of the credit for that. If I fail miserably, you get all the credit for that.
Cool, I'll take it. Yeah, I'll have you back on. You come back on and tell me what you ended up doing. I'm sure I'll talk to you in the meantime. If you have any specific questions about trapping or even if you get your first swarm call and you just got to call me and I'll FaceTime and I'll walk you through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So,
Look at these bees. They're all stinging me. My God.
yeah, you never get used to it. I got stung right on the tip of my nose today when I was trying to get this swarm out in the yard. Man, that thing had tears squirting out of my eyes. It's just the worst feeling when they get you right on the tip of the nose.
What is I guess I should ask that. Everybody says I need something different. I cannot believe, can I just say, I cannot believe the amount of not just opinion, but like opinion with conviction about what you should do and how you should do it just across the board. What do I actually want to get for like a veil or a suit? I mean, I see these people and they got like the space suit on. I'm like, that's not real. And then I see these other people and they're like out there in like cargo shorts and like a muscle shirt and they're in the bees. And I'm thinking, that's probably not real either. There's got to be some middle ground here. It's like 95 degrees today.
Yeah, usually, well, for me, anytime from April up until even now, this time of the year, I still just wear my shorts, t-shirt, and I have like a mosquito net, just a 99-cent mosquito net from the sporting goods store to
Yeah.
cover my visage, to try not to get stung. But next month I'll start wearing my suit, which is just a vented, kind of the better quality one. Um, yeah, you want to spend some money, get a good one that definitely closes and doesn't, you know, you want to try them on because some of them will fall over your face and just be really uncomfortable. But yeah, since you're just starting, you probably want a full suit and some. I like to wear nitrile gloves so I can really feel stuff. The skin on my hands is very allergic to propolis, so if I touch propolis on the frames, my skin just comes apart everywhere. So I
Wow.
used to not wear gloves, but and then as you get more comfortable, you'll just start to wear less stuff when you're messing with the bees. You'll get a few stings, you'll know what to expect, and then you can kind of take it back a notch.
Yeah.
Yes, start with a regular suit. But what I find is like people who buy nukes from Florida and Texas and everything, their bees, they're way more aggressive than the ones that I catch out in the parks and people's backyards. I've never gotten those really, really hot bees that just come out and bang into you and are just trying to get in every crack in your suit. I've never gotten those. So if you're catching bees, I doubt you're going to get those really nasty ones unless you catch someone else's bees.
Yeah. I should have, you just reminded me of something I should have mentioned earlier. One of the things about buying bees that was really unattractive to me when I started looking at this is I think somebody, I forget who put this out there, maybe it was Solomon, said that like 95% of all bees that you order come from either Georgia or California. And I was thinking, man, that's not going to go that good in like January when it's like -5. That's going to be a bad day for those bees. They've never seen that before. So I think that was part of what pushed me into like, maybe I should just try to get them locally and see what happens.
Yeah, bees are weird. I mean, I've caught bees that I knew were package bees. I just didn't get a chance to re-clean them. They had their dot on them. I just put them in a box in my yard and left them to die, and then they survived anyway without treatment. I've had that happen many times, and I've also had bees that came out of a tree that been in there 10 years and they died. So they'll throw you curveballs left and right. I don't want to send any messages to anyone listening that I just think all bees from the south are always going to die and feral bees are always going to live. That's just not how it goes. It's just about having your bees, you know, enjoying keeping bees. Some of them will live and die, and just not getting so worried about it all the time and not buying bees is the biggest thing. But yeah, no, it's just not true. Sometimes Georgia bees will survive up here. I know they do. Um, I'm not sure. I'm sure Texas and California bees sometimes survive too.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna find out, I guess. So this is fresh paper, I guess, today. But we'll see. I do want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me and talking me through some of the stuff. And I really appreciate the offer that I can follow up with you as I have additional questions, which I am sure that I will. And you know, if nothing else, maybe we're both wrong about all this treatment stuff and all the college stuff is right, but at a minimum, you're taking the time out of your day to encourage people like me that are trying to figure this out and give it a shot. And I think that's probably worth something. Um, so I thank you for that and appreciate what you're doing. So keep doing the podcast and uh, keep keeping bees and encouraging young people. Not that I'm particularly young, but young beekeepers, new beekeepers, to do their thing, because I think that probably uh, adds something to the community anyway.
Well, thanks, Matt. Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, I'm gonna be doing this till the day I die. So I don't know about podcasting, but at least messing with bees. It was great having you on. This went really well, and I hope you'll come back again and let me know how you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, take care, Matt. I'll talk to you soon.